Every once in a while, God flexes his muscles to remind us of his strength.
By the power of Jesus' name, strongholds break, strongholds break. He's our fortress and our strength. God, we will trust in you.
Aaron Schust is a well-known Christian musician. He's also a husband and dad. And one of the ways he has seen God flex his muscles is through his youngest son's life. Aaron is our guest on this episode of GPS, God, People, Stories. I'm Jim Kirkland. My co-host, Phil Fleischman, enjoying a week of vacation. A little later on this episode of GPS, by the way, you're going to hear a reminder from Billy Graham about another way that God shows us his strength.
God allows all things to happen for our good. Nothing ever happens except by the permissive will of God.
If you want to find out more about God and beginning a relationship with him through his son, Jesus Christ, we have a website for you. Mark this down. It's findpeacewithgod.net. That's findpeacewithgod.net.
GPS.
God.
People. Stories.
One by one, these high school kids, a couple years older than me, were giving their testimony using the word backsliding, which I was unfamiliar with, but they described how they just made mistake after mistake after mistake, and I was getting petrified, thinking, this is what's next for me.
It was a Sunday night in Pittsburgh, PA, and Aaron Schust was about 12 or 13 at the time. He was running the soundboard at his little church.
And up in that sound booth, I prayed, God, keep me from that. Let me follow hard after you. Keep me close to you.
The Schust family was very active in that little church. That family is comprised of Aaron, his younger brother, and their parents.
My mom was the musician in the family who got me into music, and she taught herself piano when she was a kid. So she was in charge of like the choirs and choosing the songs for Sunday morning, which, back in the day was just, pick 3 hymns and a song for the choir. And so she would lead the choir, and she was passionate about it. She was always very passionate about teaching music, which is probably where that passion trickled down to me. So the passions of music and the church, look at what I do all these years later. It's making music for the church.
Aaron went on to get a degree in music education at a Christian college in Georgia. And this is where the story of how Aaron met his wife begins, and it's a little on the confusing side. It's important to note, for starters, that Aaron's wife is 6 years younger than him.
I was good friends with her older sister, so her family every once in a while would drive up from Florida to North Georgia to visit the oldest sister in college. But when I'm 20 years old, my now wife was 13 and 14, so I really don't recall meeting her. I remember the idea that I think there's a little sister involved.
A few years went by, and Aaron's friend Kristen invited him to her wedding. He said yes and drove down to the family home in Florida.
I'm knocking on the front door of the house, and right before she opened the door, the thought crossed my mind, I wonder if Kristen's little sister ever grew up. I don't even know her name, but she was this little kid sister. I think she was kind of cute for being a little kid. And then she opened the door, and she was 18, and I'm like, hey, the Joey Tribbiani, how you doing? The moment happened, and we hit it off with. She was dating another guy, and there was a big age gap, so there was no pressure. Because it just seemed so off limits. We just had a great time, and chemistry was there, and we just kept in touch. And within months, we were dating. Within a year, I had her parents' permission to marry her, and it happened fast. And we've been married coming up on 17 years now.
And in that time, Kristen's little sister, Sarah, along with Aaron Schust, her husband, have had 3 children, Daniel, Nikki, and Michael. Daniel's the oldest. He's 10, and he was born a little bit early, so his lungs weren't fully developed, but he is completely healthy today. Nikki is the middle son. He's 8 and had more serious health issues for about the first 18 months of his life.
He rejected all foods and water for 8 days straight, and he got diagnosed with a disease called eosinophilic esophagitis. It's EE for short these days. And so he spent a lot. This is 2010, and I was on the road on a very extensive tour when this was happening.
Touring is part of the way Aaron provided for his family, so he and Sarah made the decision that he would stay on the road while Sarah stayed by Nikki 24/7. They had friends, family, and church leaders praying for their young son, and then this happened.
They ran tests again, and the numbers of his bad cells that were off the charts historically disappeared completely. and there's no cure to this disease, and so there's nothing that they even considered giving him that might work. Nothing they could even blame. Well, we gave him this, and now it went away, so this must work. The doctor came in, looked at her clipboard, and said, "Your son no longer has this disease. You can go home."
Miracles will happen, healing will come. The plans of our enemy ruined, undone. Miracles will happen, healing will come. Here in your presence, lost in your love.
Miraculous. That's how Aaron describes it. About 2 years later or so, Aaron and Sarah learned they were pregnant once more with a third child. But it wasn't until little Michael Aaron was born that his parents discovered he had Down syndrome and major heart problems, as well as the fact he was completely deaf.
We actually took him to a Chris Tomlin concert and sat in the front with the big, huge, it was loud, and he slept through the whole thing because he was deaf, just completely deaf. I mean, we had, with clinical proof, multiple tests, flatlined, left ear, right ear, both deaf.
Just as they turned to God in prayer when Nikki was so critically sick, Aaron and Sarah did the same for Michael. Sarah took him to a prayer conference in New York City.
And the next morning at the hotel, she said that she called his name, and for the first time in his almost 2 years of life, he turned his head whenever she called his name. And she was like, "That's never happened before." And the next day, Sunday, they were home. I was holding him at church on Sunday morning, and after worship, he was babbling, like singing, like maybe he's mimicking the sounds that he heard. And he had a test scheduled anyway on Monday morning, and the test came back full range of perfect hearing in both ears. And we have the peaks and valleys to prove it. So just another miracle, I often describe it as every once in a while God flexes his muscles to remind us of his strength. And he doesn't always answer every prayer, which is a mystery to me. It honestly is, especially as I read the New Testament. Are you willing? Am I willing? Of course I'm willing. Be healed, Jesus would say. But sometimes he chooses not to heal. And I choose to believe it's because he has a better story in mind. Where he will receive his glory through an ailment, maybe, or through healing later. And I just choose to trust.
While little Michael's hearing has been restored, he still has a lot of physical struggles. Besides the Down syndrome, he is very tiny for his age. He's been diagnosed with epilepsy, and recently he lost all his hair.
So there's a lot of things stacked against him, but he's a joy, and he greets me, and he's considered nonverbal. They said he would never talk and he would never walk. I just posted a picture of him on my Instagram a couple of days ago of him walking back and forth on a stage, acting like he's preaching a sermon. So he does both. He does both well.
Aaron Schust has learned how important it is to remember the biblical promise that God is good all the time, no matter what situation you're facing.
When the world around you starts to shake, this is like a physical analogy here. Imagine you're on a subway, and when you hit that bend 60 miles an hour, you're naturally going to reach out to a pole. You're not going to reach out to the kid standing next to you, unless it's your kid. You're trying to secure him as well. You're going to reach out to a pole or one of those nasty handles that hang from the ceiling. You're going to grab onto something secure. And when the world around you starts to shake, you're naturally going to reach out to something that you believe is secure. And I believe in the promises of God. We stand on the promises of God. So when the world around us starts to shake, we reach out and we hold on to his promises. The fact that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever is good news because of his character, because we believe that he is good.
Deliver me, even when I am afraid, when the world around me shakes, I know you will never change. Deliver me, oh Lord, deliver me. Deliver me.
As Aaron said, and as the Bible teaches, God is